Hello everybody and welcome back. It's been another soggy week on the old homestead. We've had lots of rain and fog and just cold temperatures. No more snow or anything, but just kind of miserable days, which is kind of typical for winter in the Ozarks. As you know, last week my brother Bill came on and we talked about the supplies you would need for starting seeds yourself if you decide to do that, the advantages of doing that. If you plant from seed, you're not reliant on either Walmart or Lowe's or a farm store somewhere to have the plants that you want when you want them in the varieties that you want. We also covered some different seed outlets that you can order seeds from, which works real well. Of course, you can always pick those up in town also, or even better, we had talked some about saving seeds from year to year from the plants that do the best in our gardens. And I kind of like that idea because you're not reliant on anyone, really. Once you start saving all your own seeds, you don't even have to be reliant on a seed company somewhere. So that was really handy stuff to know, and the equipment, the different things we'll need, which that'll be coming up in, about a month from now. We'll be starting plants indoors here in the Ozarks anyway. So he agreed to come on again this week, and this week we're going to talk about different varieties of plants that he has had good experience with, and the differences between determinate and indeterminate plants and which ones you may want or may not want for whatever reason. Also peppers and some other vegetables. So he's going to be helping us out talking about that this week. I appreciate him doing that. This time of year is kind of rough getting a lot done outside on infrastructure like we should be working on during the winter, but there's a lot of good information that we're going to be needing. So without further ado, here's my brother Bill.
All right, so far we have talked about why it's a good idea to start seed for yourself, when is a good time to start seed, some places that you can find seed, pretty good sources, and now what types of seed should you start? What are some varieties? So we're going to be talking about tomatoes, both big slicers, paste tomatoes or canning tomatoes, cherry tomatoes. We're also going to look at a few pepper varieties that I really like, and then an eggplant that has been real good for me over the years. Before we start that though, I think we need to take a moment and talk about indeterminate versus determinate tomatoes. What is the difference there? So, generally speaking, heirloom varieties of tomatoes are generally indeterminate. What does indeterminate mean? So, indeterminate means that the size of the plant is not determined ahead of time. Kind of sounds a little common sense. But functionally what that means is that the tomato never stops growing as long as it's alive, right? So from the time you first put that little seedling in the ground until the first frost kills the tomato plant, it's continuing to grow. So sometimes they'll get 10, 12 or more feet long, the vines on it. Indeterminate tomatoes produce throughout the season at a pretty steady rate once they begin producing, and so you get a steady stream of tomatoes throughout the season. Now, determinate tomatoes, those are more of your hybrids, although there are a few heirloom varieties that are determinate, and their size is determined by their genetics. So they only get so big, usually about 5-6 foot long vines on those. Another function of determinate tomatoes is that they tend to produce most of the crop at about the same time. So they will put on, and you see these a lot with like canning or paste tomatoes, they put on this big crop of tomatoes in a very short amount of time, within a couple weeks, and then they just kind of trail off and you don't get nearly as many. You get a few the rest of the season, but not too many. Now for canning tomatoes, that is fantastic, right? Because it lets you get in most of your crop, and so you're not having to try and save tomatoes over the course of the season and to get up enough to bother canning, right? But for things like big slicer tomatoes, you don't want 27 slicer tomatoes on your kitchen table all at once, right? You don't eat them that much unless you've got a huge family. So that's kind of the difference between indeterminate and determinate. And as you're ordering your seed, you need to be looking, is this a determinate or an indeterminate variety? And then kind of figure that into as you're planting your garden, right? If you're just going to grow a tomato in a 5-gallon bucket on your porch, you probably don't want an indeterminate variety unless you have some way of trellising it, right? Because it would just take over. Whereas if you are trying to grow long season plants and you want to have slicers throughout the year, you may not want to grow determinate because they're going to put them all on at once. I hope that makes it clear as we move forward then looking at the kind of varieties of tomatoes that I really like. All right, so starting on my favorite varieties of tomatoes, I'm going to start with slicers, right? The big tomatoes, you cut them up, put them on a sandwich. Really, that's one of the best things in the garden is you go out, you pick this tomato that's just peak of freshness, take it in, slice it up, put it on a sandwich, or just eat it just off the plate. Just slice it up and eat it just as is. It's just absolutely incredible. There are so many great heirloom, particularly varieties of tomato that big slicer tomatoes that it's hard to kind of pick two. But what I come down on is the first one is Brandywine. It's an old heirloom variety. It's available in all the magazines that catalogs that I mentioned to you, and it wins taste test all the time. It is it's not a real pretty tomato. It's kind of boat shaped, but it is a delicious tomato, and it gets big. It's a pound and a half, 2 pounds. So delicious flavor, and it's indeterminate, and produces great tomatoes throughout the year. The other is Cherokee Purple, which is a darker tomato. It almost, in the full sun, it almost has a real deep purple look to it, which is a little weird looking, but it has an incredible flavor, and it's a good producer. I grow those just about every year. They're great not only to slice up on a sandwich or just eat as is, but they also are pretty good addition to like a salsa or spaghetti sauce, something like that. They are kind of a rounder tomato, about the size generally of a baseball or a tennis ball. So not huge like a Brandywine, but a really good tomato, and I consistently have good crops. There's a few others that are good. Abe Lincolns are a good variety that I like. Oxheart is another one that I like. But Brandywine and Cherokee Purple are the top of my list. All right, the second type of tomato that I'd like to recommend is in the paste or canning tomato type. These are grown in order to do just that, to can or to make paste out of something like that. They have a lot less liquid to them, and they're a lot firmer, and so you get a lot more of the meat to your pasta or whatever, or to your paste or to your sauce, whatever it is you're making. So my favorite of these varieties, and there's a lot of good ones, is Roma. They're probably the best known variety as well of the paste tomatoes. They are a determinate, but they're also open pollinated or heirloom. So unlike a lot of heirlooms, they are a determinate plant. So they only get so big. They produce, as we talked about earlier, they produce all of their crop in a very short window. Not all of it, but most of it in a very short window. They are consistently good producers. I don't know that I've ever had a crop that I could say failed or was poor, and they're easy to manage because they stay a fairly manageable size, right? There's some other good varieties out there. Amish Paste is another good paste tomato, and it's an heirloom. San Marino, I believe is how you pronounce it, is another good paste tomato. But for me, over 45 years of gardening, I've just found that the Roma really is what performs best for me overall. So I hope that helps in finding a paste tomato if you're planning on doing some canning. The final type of tomato is the cherry tomato. And for this, I really like the Peacevine cherry tomato. Now, it is not available, as far as I have been able to find, in any of the 3 catalogs I recommended earlier, Baker Creek, Seed Savers Exchange, or Territorial. So you have to go online to find it. I think there's a variety, a source called Hymo seeds. That I believe is where I found my original stock. I, of course, save the seed year to year, so I don't have to go out and look for it as much as if I was just starting out. But anyway, it is a fantastic little cherry tomato. Really nice and sweet, has a good, rich tomato flavor, and produces tons and tons of little tomatoes. They are about, oh, maybe the size of the end of your thumb, something like that. And I be honest with, about like a grape, about the size of a grape. Be honest with you, when I'm out in the garden, I'm all the time snacking on these things. I'll pick a bunch or a handful, and as I'm working, I'm popping them in my mouth and eating them. They're just so good. They're also pretty good for making juice. So if you get such a huge quantity, you're going to be looking for something to do with them. So I gather them up, run them through a blender, and strain out the skins and the seeds, and they make a good tomato juice, or to add them to sauces or anything that you're doing. I also dehydrate them quite often. So I cut them in half, put them in my dehydrator, and let them dry up, and then put them in a mason jar and use them throughout the winter. Great to add to soups and everything. Just adds a real rich flavor, tomato flavor to it. So Peace Fine cherry tomato, highly recommend it as probably the best cherry tomato that I've found out there. Very consistent. So I hope that helps with the tomatoes, and now we're going to move on to peppers. Okay then, so what about peppers? Now, of course, we have the real spicy ones like jalapenos, cayenne, habaneros, and then you also have your sweet peppers like bell peppers, right? So I am not a huge like habanero hot pepper fan, but I do like jalapenos. In fact, I make if I do say so myself, a pretty good pickled jalapeno, and I make a pepper jam, which is, I think, pretty good, and the primary ingredient to that is jalapenos. So of course, I grow jalapenos. Now, the jalapenos that I grow, I've been saving from seed for years and years. I would suggest just kind of doing some research on your own in one of the 3 seed catalogs that I've recommended, and finding the one that seems best for you. If you like jalapenos, if you like that spice, they are very prolific. I wouldn't grow more than about 2 or 3 plants per person, because they just really will weigh you down with peppers when they come in. I also like to grow poblanos, and again, it's kind of the same thing. I've been saving seed for a long time, so just kind of look for yourself. But poblanos are a great pepper. I use them, of course, in regular cooking. They're an ingredient in my chili, which is pretty darn good, if I do say so myself. I also freeze them. I dehydrate them. They are great to use throughout the year. They have a great flavor. They're not super spicy, but they have a little bit more than a regular sweet pepper like a bell. So now then, for sweet peppers, I really like the Ozark Giant, and I found that originally in Baker Creek, and that's about, I think, the only place I've seen it. It is a really good bell pepper. They go through the color changes. They end up red when they're fully ripe. They're very sweet, have a great flavor, and they're pretty consistent producers. I've had good luck. I went through a lot of experimenting with bell peppers to find the best variety. I just settled on the Ozark Giant. That just really has been a good producer for me. There is also a variety of pepper. It's called a roasting pepper. You find it generally best, it's found in Baker Creek, and it's called Lysa. I think I'm saying it right. It's Lysaa. Lysa, I think, is the spelling on that. It's a smaller pepper, and it's sweet. It's not spicy at all. It's a sweet pepper, but it really does well. It really comes into its own when you roast it on a charcoal grill or in the house. It has a wonderful aroma, wonderful flavor. My wife loves them to eat just raw. So think about those varieties, and I hope that helps a little bit in making a decision, because there are a lot of peppers to judge on. All right, so finally we come to eggplants. Now, I have over the years had some difficulty growing eggplants in my area. The flea beetles tend to be a real pest for those, and you just don't get really good results with them. But I finally found this variety, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's called Listada di Gandia. Most of the seed catalogs that I've found carry it. I know that Territorial Seed Company does, and so does Baker Creek. In fact, Baker Creek is where I got my original seed. They're a beautiful eggplant. They're kind of a white with purple flecks on them. They get not huge. They're maybe baseball size, softball size maybe, kind of teardrop shaped. They have a good flavor, not astringent or harsh in any way, which sometimes eggplants can get that way. They have a real nice mild flavor. I use them. I cut them up and roast them on the grill with some zucchini and some tomatoes and peppers and mushrooms, and oh man, it's delicious. I've also used them in making like eggplant parmesan. They are just a really good, dependable eggplant. The flea beetles will get to them a little bit, and you have to dust them with diatomaceous earth, which we can talk about at some later episode. But overall, they just perform really well for me. So I highly recommend the Listada di Gandia if you're looking for an eggplant. All right, and so that is about that. I hope that you've gotten some good information out of this. You found it helpful. If you are an experienced gardener, or you found some varieties or some hints that I didn't mention, please put them in the comment section below, and let us know. That's how we learn, right? As we learn from each other as we are looking at how to garden. I'm still learning things, and I've been gardening for 45 years. I also hope that I didn't mess this up too bad, and that Matt lets me come back in the future and talk a little bit more about gardening and starting seeds and everything. I'm hoping to, as I think I mentioned earlier, I'm hoping to do an episode where I talk about the seeds for the warm season, the crops that you direct sow, right? So beans, lettuce, things like that. Maybe some on cabbage and the cold crops like broccoli and cauliflower, those. I also want to do a demonstration on how to start seed for some of you that have not done that a lot. I've got a system down pretty good, I feel like, and I feel like that may be helpful. And then, other things as they come up. I do a lot of food preservation. I do a lot of seed saving, so how to save those seeds to begin with. Hopefully, Matt will let me come back, and I hope and let me talk to you some more. So anyway, I hope you all have a great day, and along with Matt, I hope to see you down the trail.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Lots of good information as always. There's a little series here we're doing, just all kinds of information that you may want or be curious about, kind of preparing everyone for springtime when we can start planting and such. I also want to do an episode coming up about different breeds of chicken and the advantages or disadvantages of each one, and the ones that I chose. So that's coming up, and kind of helping everybody get ready for spring, basically. I appreciate y'all sticking with me during the winter time, and hope y'all have a great week, and hope to see y'all down the trail.